Welcome back to my 100 Day Drawing Challenge 2020. Today is day number 23 and the prompt is bugs and beetles. So for this drawing I basically just redrew what I drew last year, but I have good reason for it, I promise. I really liked last year's drawing. I thought it was really cool, really cute, and just an interesting little concept. I loved the character, I loved the colour scheme, so I really enjoyed last year's drawing, and I did have a little think to see if I could come up with something unique and different for this year, but I couldn't really think of anything good, so since I liked last year's so much, I just decided to do a little bit of a redraw of it. One of the major differences between last year and this year is that last year I just used a black outlining pen to outline the whole thing, so it's got one consistent colour over all of the outlines. And this year I used colourful fine liners to do the lines, so there's a little bit of variation in the line work and in the colour of the line work. I changed the pose a little bit, just made it a little bit different, and the pose was actually really difficult for me to get right. I had to erase stuff quite a few times to get it how I wanted it, and I did make a few mistakes here and there. The one thing that my eye keeps getting drawn to is I kind of wanted to make like her overalls kind of like, I wanted to put a bit more movement into her clothing, so the part of her overalls that are like in front of her chest I had like moved away from her body just to kind of give it a little bit of movement, like it's moving away from like the t-shirt she's wearing, so, and the strap that goes over her shoulder is like moving off of her shoulder just to give the clothing a little bit more movement, because clearly the character is moving and like her hair is moving, so I wanted to give some movement into the clothing. But unfortunately, because the silhouette is a little bit closed up, especially around her chest, like her hands are there and the bug that's flying at her is there, and her leg, her one leg is like lifted up a little bit, so there's a lot going on in like the middle of her pose. So I feel like it kind of looks like her anatomy is a bit wonky there, when actually when I planned it out it was supposed to be that her clothing was moving around, but it kind of just looks like her anatomy is a bit strange, especially around that area. The other mistake I made with this is that I originally drew her one leg completely wrong, so I erased it and drew it again, and I like it a lot better the second time around, but I just pressed down a bit too hard with the pencil, and when I tried to erase it, the lines were still quite visible, and by the end of the illustration, the lines were still quite visible. I tried to hide this by like drawing over a couple of the lines just to make it look deliberate, kind of make it look like I was trying to draw these like action lines of how she's falling, but I don't know whether it works or not. Overall, my biggest issue with this drawing is just that it's a little bit sloppy in places, like I explained with those lines that I didn't erase properly, and her anatomy ended up a little bit weird in places, but it isn't too bad. It isn't overall the worst thing I've drawn. I do really like the concept. I love the colour scheme, the like green, yellow and orange colour scheme. I think is really pretty. I really like the way I coloured her hair this year in comparison to last year. I added a lot more shading and dimension into this year's. The other thing that I changed from last year is that last year I coloured all the beetles in lots of different bright colours, so there's pink, yellow, orange, green, but this year I just stuck to purple because purple is contrasting to yellow and red is contrasting to green, and because I'd used yellow and green in her outfit I decided to use a reddish purple, like a plum colour. I still think that last year's illustration has some charm to it. I really think that the shapes are nice, and even though there's a few mistakes here and there, I still think last year's is fine. And I sort of feel the same about this year's, even though I've improved some things, like the line work I feel like is better. I don't think it's the most interesting or innovative thing I've ever drawn, but I do think it's cute. I like the concept of it. That's all for today. If you're interested, there's a link to the full challenge playlist on screen and in the description. Subscribe if you'd like to keep up with me completing this challenge, and I'll see you tomorrow for another prompt. Take care.